essentially being like, I would very much appreciate an acceptance to MIT, but considering the fact that I've overcome as much adversity as I have already, I don't particularly need it. It's a nice to have, but not a necessity. I didn't have a father in my life, and
Oh,
essentially grew up in that more dysfunctional household.
most sophomores are not allowed by their counselors to take even like one AP, and Reuben has taken like six of them, bro. Like for you to understand the level at which we're operating. So this is super impressive. Now let's get to probably the most interesting questions of this interview. So who am I here with today?
My name is Rubin Stephen. I'm a sophomore at MIT studying mechanical engineering and computer science.
Reuben, what was your GPA, SAT, and what was your curriculum that you studied?
My GPA was a 3.9 unweighted, weighted was 5.3, and then my SAT score was a 1520. In terms of curriculum, 9 IB classes and then 11 AP classes throughout my high school career, primarily focused on like math and science.
Have you got fives in all of them?
The lowest score I got on any exam was a 3 in freshman year, like AP Physics 1, but other than that, it was 4s and 5s.
So the academics were solid, essentially. APs, IB, SAT, everything. So what were the extracurriculars that you did during high school?
I was a part of varsity basketball, volleyball, and track and field. I was a part of the Black Student Union, a part of the National Honor Society. I engaged in a lot of volunteer and community service, as well as I was working a part-time job as a waiter and at Chick-fil-A.
Now let's talk about briefly about what you wrote in each of your essays.
The first essay that they gave me was, what do you do for fun? Tell us about something you do simply for the pleasure of it. And so the way I responded to that question was saying that one of the few things in my life that I do simply for the pleasure of it would have to be reading. And I wrote about how I cared about coming into that contact with different ideas and the different lenses that each different book could leave you with. And I also wrote about how reading was especially pivotal to me in my background because it acted as a medium for escape to a degree. The next essay was describe your community. And the primary thing I wrote about in that essay, the low income nature and like lack of opportunities that was characterizing my upbringing caused me to be motivated by a sense of discontent and dissatisfaction, and how my primary motivation with pursuing academic excellence was in order to try and fix the socioeconomic status of my family. The next essay was contributing to your community. I wrote about how one of my proudest memories to date would have been volunteering in a youth basketball league, and essentially I was coaching younger people and trying to impart on them the same wisdom and values and principles that my coaches before me had passed down, and essentially trying to give them those same life lessons that one gets from participating in a team sport. The next essay after that was learning from challenges. How did you manage a situation or challenge that you didn't expect, and what did you learn from it? Experience that I wrote about in that essay was my sophomore year of high school, which for me was in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And overall, the narrative that I spoke about in that essay was how up until that point, I had been a straight A student. I hadn't really had much challenges academically, but as a result of being home and away from any resources, I began to slip. And especially considering that I was taking, I believe, 7 AP classes that year, as well as dual enrollment into FOBS. I had a C in my classes, and it looked like I was going to begin a downward trajectory. The primary thing that I said that I learned from that experience was the importance of individual determination and hard work, because through those two values, I was able to turn around my grades and eventually finish with an AP Scholar with Distinction Award in the year of 2021.
Just to give a little bit context for the audience, like most high schoolers in the United States, most sophomores are not allowed by their counselors to take even like one AP because they're considered like, oh, you'll take it in your like junior or senior years, right? Because you'll have more knowledge, or they don't quite recommend it for them. And Reuben has taken like 6 of them, bro. Like for you to understand the level at which we're operating. So this is super impressive.
There was an additional information section, and so the primary thing I wrote about in that essay was about my familial life. I didn't have a father in my life, and essentially grew up in that more dysfunctional household. Painted a backdrop on a lot of the different experiences that I was having. I spoke essentially about how I felt as though I went through the majority of my experiences without much support. And so I ended the essay with, it's actually kind of funny. I ended the essay essentially being like, I would very much appreciate an acceptance to MIT, but considering the fact that I've overcome as much adversity as I have already, I don't particularly need it. It's a nice to have, but not a necessity. Yeah.
Bro, that's legendary. Yeah, that's amazing. Now, let's get to probably the most interesting questions of this interview. If you were to give advice to a person who is watching us right now, who is probably a sophomore, junior, they don't particularly have any extracurriculars, they don't particularly know how to write essays, but they're having a decent GPA and they're hoping to get into MIT one day and become Reuben like you and get into one of the best universities in the world. What is your best advice for those people?
So strategically, like from a high level, I would say do things that are true to you and then speak from that level of passion and authenticity. So like for like in terms of relating it to my personal application, like I played basketball and I involved myself in those extracurriculars out of genuine desire for them. And then from there, it was about framing those in a way that made them marketable to a college, as opposed to picking different activity that you may not really like in the idea that it's going to make you more marketable, but like it comes through, like they can smell the fact that you don't really care. Do things that are true to you and then write about those after. Don't try to fit yourself into the mold of what these schools want. Tactical advice: if you're trying to go to a top university, obviously you're going to need your grades and extracurriculars to be up. Involve yourself in community service, I would say. But whilst doing so, take very important care that you maintain a sense of personality, because at least from like my experience and speaking to different kids like that have been asking me for advice, everybody and their brother is involved, like they have solid academics, and so it's about making yourself stand out and doing and speaking about something that only you can do and speak about. So like what makes you one of one, and then translating that into a fashion that is marketable to those colleges.
How do you think you differentiated yourself from others, Ruben?
I'm gonna just call a spade a spade. The majority of like Black students from my area don't achieve those sorts of things, so that's like the first differentiator, like the demographic makeup of where I come from. And then in addition to that, differentiated myself by having that strong connection to the athletic side. So in addition to having a high GPA and strong SAT score, not a lot of kids who do those are also playing like varsity sports at a high level and or working a job. And so I believe what helped me stand apart was the fact that I had a combination of all of those different things in one package.
High academics, high level extracurricular involvement, which in your case is basketball and volleyball, and also like personal responsibility, like working to support your family, right?
Yeah. In addition to that, I believe my essays did a pretty good job in communicating those specific aspects, because I know that there's a lot of people who have similar challenges, if not worse challenges than me, but due to an inability to communicate it effectively, they might not get looked at just because like the admissions officer doesn't know. And so like the only way for them to know is for you to put it in a way that they can understand. My linguistic ability was able to be very high, and I feel like that helped me a lot with my application.
Rubin has his Instagram. Do you have any other except like TikTok or maybe YouTube? Anything else?
Yeah, so you could find me on Instagram at rstephen rstephen.04. TikTok is rstephen_04. YouTube is the same thing. I also have a school community, but that's called Learn Well Society. And yeah, I think those are the primary things that I'd like to be reached at.
I will leave for everything the link in the description. Yeah, definitely follow Rubin on his social media. Rubin, thank you so much for your time. Stay in touch.